The confidence trap. Why trying to be more confident makes you less confident. A revolutionary guide to real confidence, authentic presence, and the courage to be imperfect. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is action taken in the presence of fear. Susan David. For everyone who has ever felt like a fraud, even while achieving the things they claim to fear. Your doubt is not weakness. It is the beginning of genuine growth. Preface. The confidence industry and its broken promise. We live in an age of unprecedented confidence instruction. Walk into any bookstore, scroll through any social media feed, or attend any professional development workshop and you will encounter the same core message, delivered in countless variations. You need more confidence, and here are the techniques, tips, and tactics to get it. Fake it till you make it. Power poses, positive self-talk, visualization, affirmations, the confidence of a CEO, the presence of a movie star, the self-assurance of someone who has never known doubt. We are instructed to stand taller, smile wider, speak louder, and believe in ourselves more completely. We are told that confidence is a skill that can be trained, a muscle that can be strengthened, a commodity that can be acquired if only we apply the right techniques with sufficient intensity. And yet, despite decades of escalating instruction in confidence-building techniques, something peculiar has happened. Reported confidence levels have not increased. They have decreased. Rates of anxiety, depression, and self-doubt have risen. Imposter syndrome, the persistent conviction that one is not as capable as others believe, has become so ubiquitous that it is now nearly normative among high achievers. Young adults report unprecedented levels of social anxiety and performance pressure. Professional environments are plagued by presenteeism and image management. What if the problem is not that we are doing the confidence-building techniques incorrectly? What if the problem is the techniques themselves? What if the very act of trying to build confidence is the mechanism that undermines it? This book is based on a simple but revolutionary premise. Genuine confidence cannot be manufactured through effort. It emerges naturally when three conditions are present: a genuine sense of competence born from actual accomplishment, a willingness to be authentically present rather than performing a confident persona, and the courage to face uncertainty and incompetence directly rather than trying to eliminate them. The confidence trap is the situation in which the harder you try to be confident, the more self-conscious you become, and the more self-conscious you become, the less authentically present you are, and the less authentically present you are, the less genuinely confident you appear, creating a reinforcing cycle of self-doubt and performance anxiety that the standard confidence-building techniques only intensify. Breaking this cycle requires a fundamentally different approach, one that does not focus on building confidence at all, but on the conditions from which genuine confidence naturally emerges. This book maps that territory. Introduction. The paradox that changes everything. There is a peculiar moment in the work of building confidence that every person who has seriously attempted it encounters. The moment when you realize that the better you become at executing the confidence-building techniques, the more you are aware of yourself performing them, and the more aware of yourself performing them you become, the less confident you actually feel. You stand up straighter, as you were instructed. But now you are conscious of your posture. You smile wider, as you were instructed. But now you are monitoring whether the smile looks genuine. You speak louder and slower, as you were instructed. But now you are listening to your own voice and assessing its confidence level. You have become a performer watching yourself perform, and the performance itself, the consciousness of executing the technique, has become a barrier to the easy authenticity that is the actual essence of confidence. This is the confidence paradox. Self-consciousness about confidence undermines confidence. The mechanism of self-monitoring that the confidence-building industry recommends, pay attention to how confident you are acting, adjust your behavior to be more confident, is precisely the mechanism that generates the insecurity that the industry claims to be addressing. This book is an exploration of why this paradox exists, what it reveals about the actual nature of confidence, and what a genuinely effective path to real confidence looks like. a path that does not depend on performance techniques or positive thinking, but on the direct development of the conditions from which authentic confidence naturally emerges. What this book will and will not do. This book will not teach you power poses or affirmations. It will not give you 10 tips for projecting more confidence or a 10-day confidence challenge. It will not suggest that confidence is simply a matter of mindset or that you can think or act your way to it if you just try hard enough. Instead, it will trace the actual mechanisms of confidence, why some people seem naturally at ease while others are plagued by self-doubt, what happens in the nervous system when you try to perform confidence, how authenticity and confidence are connected in ways that confidence-building advice typically overlooks, and most importantly, what actually has to happen for confidence to develop as a genuine quality of presence rather than a manufactured performance. The research examined in this book comes from neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, and decades of careful observation of what actually works in contexts where real confidence matters. Operating room confidence, athletic performance under pressure, the confidence required to take genuine creative risks, the confidence required in vulnerable relationships. In all these domains, the people who perform best are not those who are most consciously managing their confidence. They are those who have learned to trust their competence enough to stop monitoring themselves. The central insight. The central insight of this book is this: real confidence is a byproduct of a specific way of being in the world, not a direct achievement. It emerges from the intersection of three factors: genuine competence, actual skill and knowledge built through consistent practice and experience; authentic presence, showing up as yourself rather than performing an image of who you think you should be; and acceptance of uncertainty, the willingness to face situations you cannot fully control or predict without needing to manage that uncertainty through self-monitoring or performance. When any of these three elements is compromised, when you lack competence but try to perform confidence anyway, when you abandon authenticity in favor of a confident persona, or when you become so anxious about uncertainty that you shift into self-monitoring mode, the result is a kind of brittle pseudo-confidence that is exhausting to maintain and collapses under any real pressure. The path to real confidence therefore involves not the intensification of self-focus trying to be more confident, but the liberation from it becoming so competent and so present that confidence is simply the natural expression of that competence and presence. That is what this book is about. It is the harder path, in some ways. It requires genuine skill development, genuine self-examination, and genuine courage. But it is the only path that actually works, and when you understand why, everything changes. Chapter 1. What confidence actually is and what it isn't. Before we can understand what goes wrong when we try to build confidence, we must first understand what confidence actually is. And what confidence is turns out to be quite different from what the confidence industry claims. The popular conception of confidence treats it as a psychological state, a subjective feeling of certainty, self-assurance, or positive self-belief. From this perspective, someone is confident if they feel confident, if they have a strong sense of self-efficacy, if they believe in their abilities, if they are convinced of positive outcomes. The practical implication of this understanding is clear. To be more confident, you need to cultivate these positive feelings about yourself. Build your self-esteem. Believe in yourself. Repeat affirmations. Visualize success. But this understanding has a fatal flaw. It confuses the subjective feeling of confidence with the objective reality of confidence. More problematically, it opens the door to the kinds of faked confidence that are so prevalent in contemporary professional and social life, the artificial self-assurance that is often nothing more than a defense against underlying insecurity. Confidence is evidence, not feeling. A more precise understanding treats confidence not as a feeling but as a judgment, and more specifically, as an evidence-based judgment. To be confident is to be reasonably certain, based on actual evidence, that you have the capacity to handle a specific situation or achieve a specific goal. This evidence can take many forms. It can be evidence of past success. You have given presentations before and performed reasonably well, so you can reasonably expect to give this presentation reasonably well. It can be evidence of preparation. You have thoroughly studied the material, anticipated questions, and practiced your response, so you have reasonable grounds for expecting to perform competently. It can be evidence of capability in similar domains. You have developed expertise in related areas that is likely to transfer to this situation. It can be evidence of support and resources. You have access to help, mentorship, or tools that will aid your performance. The critical feature is that genuine confidence is rooted in actual evidence. When you claim to be confident about something when you have no actual evidence for that confidence, you are not expressing genuine confidence. You are practicing what psychologists sometimes call false confidence, or overconfidence, a state that is actually an obstacle to good performance, as we will discuss at greater length later. This evidence-based view explains why fake it till you make it confidence is so fragile. If you do not actually have evidence of competence, if you have not actually developed the skill, prepared adequately, or succeeded before in similar situations, then your confident performance is built on nothing but the performance itself. And the moment pressure arrives, the moment something goes genuinely wrong, the performance collapses, because there is no actual competence underneath it to sustain it. Confidence is presence, not positivity. A second critical distinction: genuine confidence is about presence, not positivity. Confidence does not require thinking positively about yourself or your situation. It does not require feeling good or being in a good mood. It does not require believing that everything will work out. What confidence actually requires is the capacity to be genuinely present in the moment, to show up authentically, to respond to what is actually happening rather than what you are anxious about, to engage with the task or the person in front of you rather than monitoring how well you are doing. This is why some of the most genuinely confident people in challenging fields, emergency room doctors, military personnel, competitive athletes, often do not feel good during their performance. They may feel focused, engaged, clear, but not happy or positive. Their confidence is expressed through their presence and their performance, not through how they feel. Conversely, someone might feel very positive about themselves and still lack presence. They might be focused on the impression they are making rather than on the task. They might be thinking about how well they are coming across rather than about what they are actually supposed to be doing. This positive feeling is not confidence. It is a different kind of self-focus, one that is as disruptive to genuine performance as negative self-focus is. Confidence is the absence of self-consciousness. Here is perhaps the most important distinction. Genuine confidence is characterized by a relative absence of self-consciousness. The genuinely confident person is not thinking about how confident they appear. They are not monitoring themselves. They are not evaluating their performance in real time. They are not worried about the impression they are making. This is the opposite of what the confidence-building industry teaches. The industry suggests that you should be highly conscious of your confidence, monitoring your posture, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, your self-talk, your belief in yourself. The suggestion is that conscious self-management of these elements will produce genuine confidence. But this is backwards. The direction of causality is the opposite of what the industry suggests. Genuine confidence produces the freedom from self-consciousness. You do not become confident by monitoring your confidence. You become confident in the areas where you have sufficient competence that you have learned to stop monitoring yourself. This is why the greatest athletes, the most skilled performers, the most genuinely self-assured people in any field are characterized not by self-consciousness but by a kind of flow state. A state in which they are so present in what they are doing that self-monitoring is impossible. The basketball player in the zone is not thinking about her jump shot. The surgeon in the operating room is not monitoring her hand stability. The musician performing at their peak is not listening critically to their own playing. Confidence and risk tolerance. A final critical feature of genuine confidence is its relationship to risk. Genuine confidence does not eliminate risk or uncertainty. It does not even eliminate fear. What genuine confidence does is create the capacity to face risk, uncertainty, and even fear without being overwhelmed by them. This is a crucial distinction because the confidence-building industry often implicitly suggests that confidence is about not being afraid, not being uncertain, not being at risk of failure. But this is impossible, and pretending otherwise is what creates the brittleness of false confidence. No one can genuinely be certain of success in any challenging endeavor. No one can eliminate the possibility of failure. No one can guarantee positive outcomes. Genuine confidence is therefore not about the absence of risk or the certainty of positive outcomes. It is about the capacity to take action in the face of genuine risk, genuine uncertainty, and genuine possibility of failure. It is about being willing to put yourself in situations where you might fail, because you trust your capacity to handle failure if it comes. This is the profound difference between genuine confidence and false confidence. False confidence says, "I will not fail because I am confident." Genuine confidence says, "I might fail, and that is acceptable because I can handle it." The first is fragile and dependent on luck. The second is robust and independent of luck. Understanding these distinctions, that confidence is evidence-based rather than feeling-based, that it is about presence rather than positivity, that it is characterized by the absence of self-consciousness rather than its intensification, and that it coexists with rather than eliminates genuine risk and uncertainty, completely changes how we approach the problem of developing it. Chapter 2. The Self-Consciousness Trap: Why Self-Monitoring Destroys Confidence. The most direct mechanism through which trying to be more confident makes you less confident is the mechanism of self-consciousness and self-monitoring. Understanding this mechanism is essential, because it explains why nearly all conventional confidence-building techniques actually make confidence worse. Self-focused attention and the spotlight effect. The psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky conducted a series of studies that revealed a phenomenon they called the spotlight effect. People systematically overestimate how much others are noticing them and paying attention to them. In one famous experiment, participants were asked to wear an embarrassing T-shirt to a classroom full of other students. The participants predicted that roughly 50% of the other students would notice and remember the shirt. In reality, approximately 25% did. The participants' self-consciousness about the shirt led them to assume that everyone else was equally focused on it, when in fact most people were barely paying attention. This is the first problem with trying to be more confident. The effort to be more confident naturally increases self-focused attention. You become more aware of how you appear to others because you are trying to appear more confident. This increased self-focused attention generates increased self-consciousness. You are now very much aware of yourself as an object of potential judgment. And this self-consciousness is precisely what undermines the ease, authenticity, and presence that actual confidence requires. When you are self-conscious about your confidence, you are not present. You are split into two: the part of you that is trying to do whatever task is in front of you, and the part of you that is observing and evaluating how confidently you are doing it. This split is intrinsically disruptive to performance, because it fragments attention between the task itself and the monitoring of your execution of the task. The self-monitoring loop and performance impairment. The psychologist Roy Baumeister and colleagues have extensively documented a phenomenon called choking under pressure, the paradoxical tendency for people to perform worse, not better, when they are trying hardest and are most self-conscious about their performance. In their research, skilled people, golfers, athletes, musicians would perform worse under pressure when they were focused on how well they were performing, particularly on the technical elements of their performance. The mechanism is a specific form of what they call the self-monitoring loop. When you become self-conscious about a behavior that normally operates automatically, you shift control from the automatic system, which is highly competent and finely tuned through practice, to the conscious, controlled system, which is much less sophisticated and much more error-prone. You start thinking about things you normally do without thinking about them. A golfer who normally putts from automatic competence but who becomes self-conscious about his putting stroke under pressure starts thinking about the mechanics of the stroke, his grip, his stance, the arc of his swing. This conscious attention to elements that normally operate automatically actually impairs his performance. The moment he starts trying to put more effort into doing the stroke right, he goes from automatic competence to conscious incompetence. This is directly relevant to confidence because the confidence-building instruction to be more conscious of your confidence and to monitor whether you are appearing confident triggers exactly this self-monitoring loop. You shift from the automatic operating mode that actual confidence is to the conscious control mode where you are trying to manage an image of confidence. And this shift is what creates the awkward, inauthentic, performance-based quality that screams insecurity to everyone around you. Self-consciousness and social anxiety. The relationship between self-consciousness and anxiety is well established in the anxiety research literature. In fact, one of the core symptoms of social anxiety disorder is excessive self-consciousness. The anxious person is hyperaware of how they appear to others, extremely focused on the impression they are making, intensely monitoring for signs of negative evaluation. Importantly, this self-consciousness is not the cause of social anxiety in the sense of being its primary driver. Rather, it is a symptom and a maintaining mechanism. The person becomes anxious often for reasons rooted in early experience, as we discussed in earlier books, and this anxiety produces self-consciousness. But once the self-consciousness is in place, it becomes a feedback loop that intensifies the anxiety. The self-conscious monitoring for signs of negative evaluation means that the person is more likely to notice and attend to any signs of possible rejection or criticism, which then confirms and intensifies the anxiety. This is precisely the loop that the confidence-building instruction to monitor your confidence activates in people who are already somewhat anxious. The instruction to watch how you come across, to evaluate whether you are seeming confident, to assess your performance. These instructions turn everyone into something closer to a person with social anxiety, regardless of their baseline anxiety level. You are now self-conscious. You are now monitoring the impression you are making. You are now likely to notice the signs of negative evaluation that everyone occasionally sends out. And you are now more anxious and less confident than you were before you started the confidence-building exercise. The authenticity problem. A final mechanism through which self-consciousness destroys confidence is the way it undermines authenticity. The genuinely confident person is able to be authentically themselves in a situation, to respond based on their actual values, beliefs, and reactions rather than on a calculated assessment of how they should appear to others. When you are self-conscious about your confidence, authenticity becomes impossible. You are now making your behavior based on how you think you should appear rather than on what you actually think and feel. You are now performing a version of yourself that you believe is more confident rather than being the actual self that you are. This performance quality is one of the most obvious and off-putting features of false confidence. People can tell that you are not being real, and the perception that you are performing, that you are not authentic, is precisely what destroys the very confidence you are trying to demonstrate. Genuine confidence, conversely, is closely associated with authenticity. The person who is genuinely confident is able to be themselves, to express their actual views, to acknowledge uncertainty where it exists, to admit mistakes, to ask for help when they need it. This authenticity is what makes them believable and trustworthy. And paradoxically, this authenticity, which includes the authenticity of acknowledging what you do not know, is far more confidence-inspiring than any amount of false certainty could be. Chapter 3. The Neuroscience of Performance Anxiety. What happens when you try? To understand why trying to be confident makes performance worse, we must look at what happens in the brain and nervous system when you engage in the effort to perform confidence. The neuroscience reveals something important. There is a fundamental incompatibility between the neural systems that support genuine performance and the neural systems that are activated when you are trying to manage how you appear. The default mode and task-positive networks. The human brain contains several large-scale networks that support different modes of functioning. Two of the most important are the default mode network, DMN, and the task positive network, TPN, also called the executive control network. The default mode network becomes active when you are not focused on the external world, when your attention is turned inward, when you are thinking about yourself, when you are engaged in self-referential thought. It is active during mind wandering, during the processing of social information about yourself and others, and during the kind of self-conscious self-monitoring we discussed in the previous chapter. The task-positive network becomes active when you are focused on the external world, when you are engaged in a task that requires attention, when you are responding to the demands of the environment. It is active during genuine performance, during learning, during the kind of absorbed, present attention that characterizes genuine confidence. These two networks are, in a functional sense, antagonistic. They cannot both be fully activated at the same time. When you activate one, you deactivate the other. This is not a trivial fact for our purposes. What this means is that when you shift into self-conscious, self-monitoring mode, when you activate the default mode network by focusing on yourself and how you appear, you automatically deactivate the task-positive network. You shift out of the absorbed, present, task-focused mode that supports genuine confident performance. The moment you start thinking about how confidently you are performing, you have shifted your brain out of the neural mode that supports good performance and into the neural mode that supports self-referential thought about how you are performing. And this shift, in itself, impairs your performance. Cognitive load and divided attention. A related mechanism involves cognitive load. When you are self-conscious about how you are performing, you are creating an additional cognitive task, the task of monitoring and evaluating your own performance. This task consumes cognitive resources that would otherwise be available for the actual task you are trying to perform. The working memory and attentional capacity of the human brain is limited. If you are allocating some of that capacity to self-monitoring, how am I appearing right now? Am I seeming confident? What is my posture saying about me? You are automatically reducing the capacity available for the actual task at hand. A study by Bylock and Carr on the neuroscience of choking under pressure found exactly this pattern. Skilled performers who choked under pressure showed increased activity in the prefrontal regions associated with conscious control and conscious monitoring, activity that was associated with decreased performance. They were using more conscious cognitive control, which was actually impairing the automatic competence that had been built through practice. This is why musicians often perform better without thinking about their fingers, why athletes perform better when they're in the zone, rather than consciously trying to execute the perfect move, and why people in general perform worse when they are conscious of being watched and are trying to appear a particular way. The conscious monitoring is creating a dual task situation that taxes cognitive capacity and impairs performance. The amygdala, threat detection, and performance. A third mechanism involves the amygdala, the brain's threat detection and emotional alarm center. When you are self-conscious about how you appear, when you are anxious about being judged, when you are trying to perform confidence, there is typically an underlying current of threat activation. The perceived threat of negative evaluation, of being exposed as less competent than you are pretending to be, of social rejection. This threat activation causes the amygdala to send signals to the prefrontal cortex that increase the priority given to threat detection and self-protective responses. In moderate amounts, this can be activating and even beneficial. But in higher amounts, amygdala activation actually impairs the prefrontal cortex's capacity for complex reasoning, fine motor control, and integrated decision-making. Research by Amy Arnston and others on stress-induced prefrontal impairment shows that when the amygdala is sufficiently activated, it can actually degrade prefrontal function. You lose cognitive flexibility. Your thinking becomes more rigid. Your fine motor control deteriorates. Your ability to make nuanced decisions decreases. This is the neurological basis of choking under pressure. The very attempt to manage your anxiety about performance, and to project confidence to manage the threat you perceive, activates the threat system in a way that impairs the very performance you are trying to protect. Moreover, This threat activation produces physiological arousal, increased heart rate, faster breathing, muscle tension. This physiological arousal is experienced as anxiety. And anxiety is the opposite of the relaxed, easy presence that characterizes genuine confidence. So the attempt to be more confident, by activating the threat system, actually produces the anxious physiological state that makes genuine confidence impossible. The neuroscience of authenticity. Finally, there is emerging research on the neural correlates of authenticity and inauthenticity. When people are being authentic, expressing their genuine beliefs, values, and reactions, certain neural patterns are associated with this state. When people are being inauthentic, presenting a false self, suppressing their genuine responses to appear a certain way, different neural patterns are activated. The fascinating finding is that inauthenticity actually requires more neural effort than authenticity. When you are trying to present a false self, you are requiring the brain to constantly monitor the presentation, suppress your genuine reactions, and generate alternative behaviors that are consistent with the false self. This requires sustained engagement of executive control circuits. And this sustained engagement is experienced as effortful and exhausting. Authenticity, conversely, is neurally more efficient. When you are being yourself, expressing your genuine reactions, you do not require this constant executive monitoring and suppression. Your behavior emerges naturally from your genuine reactions. This is neurally less effortful and is experienced as easier and more natural. This has direct implications for confidence. The attempt to be more confident by presenting a more confident persona is an exercise in inauthenticity. It requires constant neural effort to maintain the false presentation. This effort is experienced as exhaustion, and the perception by others of the effort required, the sense that you are working to maintain an image, reads as insincerity and actually undermines confidence in you. Genuine confidence, conversely, is associated with authenticity, which is neurally efficient and naturally appearing. It does not require the same sustained effort to maintain, and it is perceived as genuine and trustworthy. Chapter 4. Authenticity versus performance, the hidden cost of pretending. One of the most pervasive instructions in the confidence-building world is some version of, fake it till you make it, the advice that if you cannot actually feel confident, you should at least act confident, and eventually the acting will become real. This advice is not entirely without merit, but it is profoundly incomplete and, in many cases, actively harmful. The surface acting problem. The psychologist Alicia Grandy and colleagues have conducted extensive research on the difference between surface acting, pretending to feel emotions or attitudes you do not feel, and deep acting, actually generating the emotional state that matches your external expression. Their research consistently shows that surface acting, which is essentially what fake it till you make it advice is recommending, produces several negative effects. First, surface acting requires sustained emotional suppression. You are suppressing your genuine emotional response, which may be anxiety, doubt, or fear, in order to produce a false external appearance. This emotional suppression requires ongoing cognitive effort and creates physiological stress. Over time, it is associated with burnout, decreased job satisfaction, increased anxiety, and reduced authenticity in relationships. Second, surface acting is not actually convincing. People are remarkably sensitive to inauthenticity, even when they cannot consciously identify what is inauthentic about someone's presentation. They may not be able to explicitly say, that person is pretending, but they have a sense that something is not quite right. The confidence you are faking does not read as genuine confidence. It reads as someone trying to appear confident, which is exactly what it is. Third, and most importantly, surface acting prevents the actual development of the internal state you are pretending to have. When you are engaged in sustained pretense, you are not addressing the sources of your actual lack of confidence, the skill gaps, the unprocessed fears, the past experiences that generated your insecurity. You are just covering them up. And the covering up, because it requires energy and attention, actually prevents the genuine development that would lead to real confidence. The paradox of pretense. There is a specific paradox in the "fake it till you make it" advice. The thing that would actually help you develop genuine confidence, working through your fears, developing actual competence, building real skill, is incompatible with the pretense that you have already arrived at confidence. If you are pretending to be confident, if you are trying to appear competent, if you are managing an image of someone who already has it all figured out, then you do not have the psychological and relational space to admit that you are struggling, to ask for help, to acknowledge what you do not know, to work through the fears and self-doubt that real growth requires. This is why many high-achieving, outwardly confident people report feeling like imposters. They have built a facade of competence and confidence, but underneath that facade, they have not actually worked through the self-doubt and fear that the facade was designed to protect against. The facade prevents the work that would generate genuine confidence. And so they are trapped in the pretense. Authenticity and the development of genuine confidence. By contrast, the development of genuine confidence requires a willingness to be authentic about where you actually are. This means admitting when you are struggling. It means acknowledging what you do not know. It means asking for help. It means making mistakes visible rather than trying to hide them. It means being willing to be not yet competent, not yet confident, in the service of actually becoming competent and confident. This authenticity is not pleasant in the short term. It is vulnerable. It opens you to judgment. It makes you appear uncertain and unstable. But it is the necessary condition for genuine development. When you can authentically acknowledge what you need to work on, you can actually work on it. When you can authentically acknowledge your fear, you can actually face it and move through it. When you can authentically acknowledge your incompetence in a particular domain, you can actually learn and develop competence. The person who says, "I do not know how to do this, but I want to learn," is in a far better position to actually learn than the person who pretends to already know how. The person who says, "I am nervous about this, and I am going to do it anyway," is in a far better position to develop the capacity to move through fear than the person who pretends the fear is not there. Genuine confidence emerges from this process of authentic engagement with the present reality of where you are, what you actually know and do not know, what you are actually feeling. It is rooted in honest self-assessment. And honest self-assessment requires the courage to be vulnerable about what you discover. The relationship cost of inauthenticity. There is one more cost of sustained pretense that deserves mention: the cost to authentic connection with others. When you are engaged in surface acting, when you are pretending to be confident, when you are managing an image, you are not actually present in your relationships. You are partially dissociated, focused on the performance rather than on genuine connection. Other people feel this inauthenticity. They sense that you are not fully present. They perceive the effort of the performance. And this perception undermines the possibility of genuine connection. You may appear competent or confident, but you also appear distant, defended, not fully available for real engagement. By contrast, when you are willing to be authentic, when you are willing to admit uncertainty, when you are willing to ask for help or to acknowledge struggle, you create the possibility of genuine human connection. People respond to this authenticity. They feel that you are actually there. They trust you more, not less, even though you have revealed less than perfect competence or confidence. This is one of the most profound and underappreciated truths about confidence. The leaders, teachers, and other figures we actually trust and feel genuinely confident in are not the ones who present an image of perfect certainty and invulnerability. They are the ones who are willing to be authentically human, to acknowledge what they do not know, to admit mistakes, to be honest about their limitations. This authenticity, paradoxically, is what makes them truly confidence-inspiring. Chapter 5. The Imposter Syndrome Paradox. Doubt as a Marker of Growth. Imposter syndrome, the persistent conviction that you are not as capable as others believe, that your success is the result of luck or deception rather than actual ability, that you are about to be exposed as a fraud, has become ubiquitous among high achievers. And it is typically treated as a problem to be solved, a form of irrational self-doubt that is holding you back from the confidence you deserve. But what if imposter syndrome is not a problem with your confidence at all? What if it is actually a marker of exactly the kind of growth and development that real confidence is built on? The relationship between competence and doubt. The psychologist David Dunning, of Dunning-Kruger effect fame, has conducted research that reveals an important truth. People at the early stages of developing competence in a domain typically have higher confidence in their abilities than people who are more advanced in that domain. This seems paradoxical, but the mechanism is clear. Novices do not know what they do not know. They lack the deep understanding of the domain that would allow them to recognize the complexity and the many ways that their understanding is incomplete. As people develop genuine expertise, they become increasingly aware of the depth of what they do not know. They become familiar with the complexity of the domain. They understand the subtle distinctions that separate the competent from the truly skilled. And this awareness produces a kind of humbling effect. The more genuinely knowledgeable you become, the more aware you are of the limits of your knowledge. It is only at the higher levels of expertise that confidence re-emerges, a confidence that is now grounded in actual knowledge of the terrain and in the sophisticated understanding of what you do and do not actually know and can do. Imposter syndrome, from this perspective, is often a sign that you are in the middle of this progression, that you have learned enough to understand what real expertise looks like, but not enough to feel like you have fully arrived there. You are aware of the gap between where you are and where the truly great performers are. And this awareness creates the sense of being a fraud, not because you actually are one, but because you have enough knowledge to know you are not yet where you want to be. Doubt is a marker of honest self-assessment. Related to this is the fact that doubt and humility about your own capabilities are actually marks of honest self-assessment. People who lack self-doubt are often those who have the least accurate view of their own abilities. They are overconfident. They do not see their limitations because they are not looking for them. The person with a realistic sense of their own abilities, who can accurately identify both their strengths and their limitations, is going to experience moments of doubt. This doubt is not a failure of confidence. It is a marker of honest, clear-eyed self-assessment. The person who has no doubt about their abilities is almost certainly not accurately assessing them. From this perspective, the goal is not to eliminate doubt, but to develop the kind of doubt that comes from honest self-knowledge. Not the self-destructive doubt that says, "I cannot do this, I am not capable, I am a fraud who does not belong here." But the honest doubt that says, "I am not yet where I want to be, and I have some work to do, and that work is possible." The confidence paradox revisited. This brings us to a deeper version of the confidence paradox. The more genuinely competent you become, the more you become aware of the vast territory of what you do not know. And this awareness, if you are not careful, can feel like a loss of confidence. You used to feel more certain. Now you are more aware of what could go wrong. Now you understand the complexity better. Does this mean your confidence has decreased? Actually, no. What has changed is the nature of your confidence. Your confidence is no longer based on an insufficient understanding of the problem. It is now based on a genuine understanding of what is required. And this deeper confidence is more robust, more flexible, and more useful than the shallow confidence born of not understanding the full complexity. The imposter syndrome that often accompanies this transition is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that you are in the process of genuine development. The doubt you are feeling is the sign that you have learned enough to see the real landscape of what you need to know. And the navigation of this landscape, the movement from doubt toward a confidence that is grounded in real knowledge rather than in the illusion of knowing, is the true path to genuine confidence. What to do with imposter syndrome? Understanding imposter syndrome as a marker of growth, rather than as a sign of inadequacy, changes how you respond to it. Rather than trying to eliminate the sense of being a fraud, you can work with it as information. The imposter syndrome voice saying, "I do not belong here," might be responding to a real skill gap that you need to address. Rather than dismissing it as irrational, you can ask, is there actually something I need to learn here? Is there actual preparation I need to do? Are there specific skills I should develop further? If the answer is yes, then the imposter syndrome is not a problem to eliminate. It is information pointing you toward genuine development. Alternatively, the imposter syndrome might be responding not to an actual skill gap but to a social or psychological dynamic. The reality that you are younger or less experienced than others in the room, but not actually less capable in the specific domain. Or it might be responding to the fact that you are in a situation that activates old insecurities, but that you are actually well qualified for the task at hand. In these cases, the imposter syndrome is still information. It is pointing to the area where you need to build confidence through actual mastery and through the repetitive experience of succeeding. In either case, what imposter syndrome is not is a sign that you should abandon your effort, accept a smaller version of yourself, or spend energy trying to feel more confident through positive self-talk. It is a sign that you are in the growth zone. And the path through that zone requires honest work on actual skill development, not confidence-building techniques. Chapter 6. How Fear and Vulnerability Actually Build Real Confidence. This chapter addresses what might seem like a contradiction to everything we have been discussing. If genuine confidence emerges from competence and presence, from honesty about where you are, from acceptance of uncertainty, then why does facing fear, being vulnerable, taking risks, and doing things that scare you seem so important for building confidence? The answer reveals the deepest level at which the confidence trap operates and the actual mechanism through which genuine confidence develops. The neuroscience of fear habituation. One of the most basic principles of fear and anxiety neuroscience is the principle of habituation or extinction. When you repeatedly encounter a feared stimulus in a safe context, without the catastrophic outcome that you were afraid of, the brain's fear response to that stimulus gradually decreases. The amygdala's alarm signal weakens. The physiological arousal diminishes. The feared situation becomes less scary. This is not about thinking your way out of fear. It is not about positive self-talk or reframing. It is about direct nervous system learning. The repeated experience of encountering the feared situation and discovering that the feared catastrophe does not materialize. Over repeated exposures, the nervous system learns that the situation is actually safe, and the fear response, which is based on the amygdala's assessment of threat, gradually diminishes. This is why exposure to feared situations is one of the most effective evidence-based treatments for anxiety. Not distraction from the fear, not avoidance of the situation, not positive thinking about the situation. Direct exposure to the situation, with the willingness to experience the fear, and the discovery that the feared outcome does not occur. This is also why the confidence-building approach of avoiding the things that make you anxious, or managing your anxiety so that you do not actually have to experience it, is so counterproductive. Every time you avoid something because you are afraid of it, you are reinforcing to your nervous system that the situation is actually dangerous. Every time you manage your anxiety to get through a situation, you are preventing the nervous system's direct learning that the situation is safe. Competence through challenge. A related mechanism is that genuine competence development requires challenge. If you only do things you are already confident doing, you do not develop new competence. You stay in your existing skill zone. Growth requires moving into the zone just beyond your current capability, the zone that is challenging and that will require you to stretch. This zone of proximal development, as the psychologist Lev Vygotsky called it, is precisely the zone that generates both growth and fear. It is the zone where you are not yet fully competent. It is the zone where you can fail. It is the zone where you must be vulnerable about not knowing how to do something that you are being asked to do. But it is also the zone where genuine confidence is built. Each time you move into this zone, succeed despite the difficulty, and expand your actual capability, you have genuine evidence of your competence. You have not just thought positively about yourself, you have actually done something that you were not sure you could do. And this builds a robust, evidence-based confidence that far exceeds anything generated by positive thinking. Vulnerability and its paradoxical strength. The researcher Brené Brown, who has spent decades studying courage, shame, and vulnerability, has found that the people who are most resilient, who most effectively handle failure and difficulty, and who most deeply connect with others are not the people who are most defended against vulnerability. They are the people who are most willing to be vulnerable, to be honest about what they do not know, to admit when they are struggling, to ask for help, to be willing to fail in front of others. This seems counterintuitive. How can being vulnerable be a strength? But the mechanism is clear. When you try to protect yourself from vulnerability, when you try to appear always confident and competent, you are creating a defended position that is actually brittle. The moment something goes wrong, the moment you fail or are exposed as less than perfect, the whole edifice collapses. But when you are willing to be vulnerable, when you can admit uncertainty and struggle, you are in a position to actually work with reality as it is. And working with reality as it is, rather than with the image you are trying to maintain, is far more effective. Moreover, the willingness to be vulnerable, to admit what you do not know, to ask for help, to take the risk of being seen, actually builds connection with others in a way that defended competence never does. People trust you more when you are willing to be genuine about your struggles than when you are pretending to have it all figured out. And people are more willing to support you, to help you, to be there for you when you are honest about your vulnerability. This support and connection is itself a source of confidence. You discover that you are not alone in your struggle. You discover that others are willing to help. You discover that being human, with all its uncertainty and imperfection, is actually acceptable and even valuable. And from this place of genuine connection and acceptance, a different kind of confidence emerges. Not the defensive confidence of someone trying to prove their worth, but the open confidence of someone who knows they are acceptable as they are. The growth mindset and the embrace of challenge. The psychologist Carol Dweck's research on mindset has revealed that people with a growth mindset, who believe that their abilities can be developed through effort, approach challenges very differently from people with a fixed mindset, who believe that their abilities are fixed and unchangeable. The growth-minded person sees a challenge as an opportunity to develop. They are willing to take on things that are difficult because they see difficulty as the price of growth, not as evidence of inadequacy. Importantly, they are not trying to prove how smart or capable they are. They are trying to develop their capabilities. This frame removes the ego stakes from the challenge. Failure is not a reflection on their worth. It is information about where they need to develop further. This mindset is crucial for developing genuine confidence because it allows you to willingly move into the zone of proximal development, the zone where you are not yet competent, where you might fail. You are not trying to appear capable. You are trying to become capable. And this reframe, combined with the willingness to face the fear of challenge and the vulnerability of potential failure, is what builds genuine, robust confidence. Chapter 7. Social comparison and the confidence illusion. One of the most powerful generators of false confidence and genuine insecurity in contemporary life is the practice of social comparison. We are surrounded by images and information about the achievements, capabilities, and apparent confidence of others, and we are constantly comparing ourselves to these images. This comparison landscape is particularly distorted in contemporary digital life, where what we see is almost never reality, but rather a carefully curated presentation of reality designed to appear impressive. Upward comparison and the illusion of inadequacy. The psychologists have identified a phenomenon called upward social comparison, the tendency to compare ourselves to people who seem superior to us in relevant dimensions. This kind of comparison tends to produce negative affect. We feel worse about ourselves, not better, as a result of the comparison. And importantly, the effects are worse when we are comparing ourselves to people who are similar to us in some dimensions but superior in the dimension we are comparing on. In the confidence domain, this means comparing yourself to people who seem similar to you, people your age, in your field, at your career stage, but who seem more capable, more successful, or more confident. This comparison is particularly damaging because it seems like a fair comparison. You are in similar circumstances, but they are doing better. This leads to the conclusion that there is something wrong with your capability, that they have something you do not have. What you do not see, of course, is what came before the success you are comparing yourself to. You do not see the years of work, the failures along the way, the vulnerability and uncertainty that the other person experienced. You do not see their moment of not knowing, their process of learning, their private doubts. You see the final product, the competence, the apparent confidence, the success. And you compare your current self, with all its doubt and uncertainty, to their finished product. This comparison inevitably makes you feel inadequate, and the more you engage in it, the more distorted your sense of reality becomes. You begin to believe that everyone else has it figured out while you do not. You begin to believe that confidence is something that other people have and you lack. And this belief system, which has been constructed through selective comparison to a distorted image of others' experience, becomes the basis for your sense of your own inadequacy. The confidence illusion in others. Paradoxically, many of the people you are comparing yourself to unfavorably, the people who appear so confident, so capable, so sure of themselves, are actually experiencing significant doubt. They are engaging in exactly the kind of presentation management and curation that you are. They are presenting their accomplished, confident self to the world. Their inner experience may be quite different from what they are presenting. Research on imposter syndrome finds that it is particularly prevalent among high achievers, people who appear successful and confident but who privately feel like frauds. The more accomplished people are, the more aware they tend to be of what they do not know and of the gap between their actual knowledge and the knowledge they perceive as necessary for true expertise. This means that the people who appear most confident are often the people who privately experience the most doubt. The person you are comparing yourself to, who seems so sure of themselves, may be even more self-conscious about their apparent confidence than you are. They may be, right now, thinking about whether they are coming across as confident enough. They may be wondering whether people see through their presentation to the uncertainty underneath. Understanding this, that the confidence you are seeing in others is partly presentation, and that the doubt you are experiencing internally is not something they have transcended but something they are actively managing, can be profoundly liberating. It suggests that the confidence gap between you and others is not as large as it appears. And it suggests that the path to developing your own confidence is not to somehow transform yourself into someone who has no doubt. That would be impossible. It is to develop the kind of confidence that coexists with doubt, that is grounded in actual competence rather than in the successful management of an image. Digital life and the distortion of social comparison. The contemporary digital environment has dramatically amplified the negative effects of social comparison. Social media, in particular, creates an environment where upward comparison is nearly constant and where the distortion of reality is systematic. People present curated versions of their lives on social media. You see their accomplishments, their highlights, their successes, their apparently effortless confidence. You do not see the work behind the achievement. You do not see the failures. You do not see the struggles. You do not see the moments of doubt. You see what they want you to see, which is necessarily not the full reality. Moreover, the comparison is now not just between you and your immediate peer group. It is between you and the most impressive versions of people globally. You are not comparing yourself to the people in your office or your class. You are comparing yourself to the most accomplished, most articulate, most impressive version of anyone anywhere. And naturally, you come up short. The result is a kind of chronic inadequacy, a pervasive sense that you are falling short, not measuring up, lacking something that others have. And this chronic inadequacy undermines the development of genuine confidence. Instead of moving through challenges to develop actual competence, you are spending energy managing your sense of not enoughness. Instead of taking the risks that growth requires, you are trying to protect yourself from the exposure that growth might entail. Breaking the comparison cycle. Breaking free from the confidence-destructive pattern of social comparison requires deliberate intervention. You cannot simply decide to think less about social comparison. The comparison happens largely outside of conscious awareness. But you can make deliberate choices about your information environment. This means being intentional about whose success you are exposed to regularly. It means curating your social media feed, not to avoid other people's success, but to include diverse examples of success that include people's struggles, their failures, their paths of learning. It means seeking out the stories behind the success, the interviews where accomplished people talk about their doubts and difficulties, the memoirs where successful people discuss their failures along the way. It means, most importantly, shifting the basis of comparison from other people to your own past performance. Are you more capable than you were 6 months ago? A year ago? Can you do things now that you could not do then? Are you growing and learning? These are the comparisons that matter for the development of genuine confidence. Not how you compare to others, but how you compare to your own history of growth. Chapter 8. The Role of Competence, Why Shallow Practice Fails. We have established that genuine confidence is rooted in actual competence, in real skill and knowledge developed through genuine practice. But not all practice is equal. And one of the reasons that confidence building fails is that it often attempts to short-circuit the actual work of developing competence. This chapter examines what genuine competence development looks like and why the shallow, quick-fix approaches to confidence cannot substitute for it. Deliberate practice and the development of expertise. The psychologist K. Anders Ericsson, through decades of research on expertise in domains ranging from chess to music to sports, found that genuine expertise is developed through what he calls deliberate practice, practice that is not simply repetition, but practice that is specifically designed to improve performance in targeted areas. Deliberate practice has several characteristics. It is focused on skill development in specific areas. It involves immediate feedback on performance. It requires considerable effort, and it is not inherently enjoyable. It is hard, frustrating, sometimes boring work that is nonetheless essential for the development of expertise. Importantly, deliberate practice is not what most people do when they practice something. Most people practice in ways that are comfortable and familiar, ways that reinforce what they already know how to do rather than pushing them into new territory. A musician who plays the same pieces over and over is practicing, but not engaging in deliberate practice designed to improve. A speaker who gives talks using the same approach each time is presenting, but not deliberately practicing the skills that would take them from adequate to excellent. Genuine expertise development requires pushing past the comfortable, familiar way of doing something and into the difficult work of learning something new. It requires being willing to perform badly, to be corrected, to be shown where your understanding or skill is incomplete. It requires the vulnerability and the willingness to face failure that we discussed in the previous chapter. Confidence based on competence is robust. One of the reasons that genuine confidence, rooted in actual competence developed through deliberate practice, is so much more robust than confidence built through techniques and positive thinking is that competence is not dependent on subjective feeling or perception. You either can perform a skill or you cannot. You either have the knowledge or you do not. This objective reality is what genuine confidence is based on. When you have actually developed a skill through deliberate practice, you do not need to try to feel confident about it. The confidence emerges naturally because the competence is real. You might still be nervous. You might still feel the adrenaline of performance. But underneath that nervousness is the solid foundation of knowing that you can do what you are attempting. This is profoundly different from the confidence built through techniques, which is always vulnerable to circumstance. If your confidence is based on having repeated affirmations or maintained the right positive mindset, then the moment you encounter self-doubt or external criticism, the confidence collapses. But if your confidence is based on the fact that you have repeatedly performed a skill successfully, that you have worked through the difficulties that arise in that domain, that you have developed the knowledge and understanding necessary to handle the challenges, that confidence is much harder to shake. The comfort zone problem. One of the reasons that many people never develop genuine competence is that they stay in their comfort zone. They do things they are already competent at, in ways they are already comfortable with. This feels good. There is no failure, no struggle, no discomfort. And it is a dead end for confidence development. The development of genuine confidence requires the willingness to leave the comfort zone and move into what is sometimes called the learning zone, or the zone of proximal development, the area just outside your current competence, where challenge is present but success is still possible. Many confidence-building approaches, because they focus on feeling better about yourself rather than on genuine skill development, actually reinforce the comfort zone. The approach is to feel more confident about what you are already doing, not to develop the skills that would allow you to do new and more challenging things. And while this might produce a temporary feeling of confidence, it does not develop the actual competence that real confidence requires. Authentic versus performed expertise. There is a distinction, important for our purposes, between authentic expertise, the kind that comes from genuine deliberate practice and experience, and performed expertise, the kind that comes from learning to speak and act like someone who is an expert. It is possible, with sufficient study and coaching, to learn to present like an expert, to use the right terminology, to understand the intellectual content well enough to discuss it. But this is not the same as having developed the embodied, intuitive knowledge that comes from years of actual experience working in the domain. This distinction matters because authentic expertise produces genuine confidence, while performed expertise produces a kind of fragile pseudo-confidence that is vulnerable the moment the conversation moves beyond the prepared territory. The expert who has spent years working with actual problems, who has developed intuition based on experience, who can respond flexibly to novel situations because their understanding is deep, this expert has real confidence. The person who has learned to talk like an expert, but who has not actually done the work in the domain, has only the confidence of the performer. And this confidence collapses the moment they are faced with actual situations that require more than the ability to discuss the topic. This is why genuine confidence cannot be developed through courses, certifications, or theoretical learning alone. These can be valuable support for the development of genuine expertise, but they must be paired with actual experience doing the work in the domain, which means being in situations where you are not yet fully competent, where you are learning through direct engagement with problems and challenges, where you are developing the embodied, intuitive knowledge that makes real expertise. Chapter 9. Building Real Confidence, the Path Through Discomfort. Now that we have identified what genuine confidence actually is, what prevents its development, and what are the conditions from which it naturally emerges, we can turn to practical questions. What is the actual process of building real confidence? What does it involve? What can a person do, right now, to move in the direction of genuine confidence? Step 1. Relinquish the pursuit of the confident feeling. The first step is a kind of surrendering of the goal that has been driving all the confidence-building effort, the goal of feeling confident. This is difficult because the goal seems so natural, so self-evident. Of course you want to feel confident. Of course you want that sense of ease and assurance. But the pursuit of the confident feeling is exactly what has been creating the self-consciousness and performance anxiety that undermines confidence. The moment you stop trying to feel confident and instead focus on the actual task in front of you, on the actual skill development you need to undertake, on the actual challenges you need to face, the confident feeling, if it is earned, will emerge naturally as a byproduct. This shift in focus is crucial. Instead of, how do I feel about my ability to do this? The question becomes, what do I need to learn or develop in order to do this well? Instead of, am I seeming confident? The question becomes, what is the task asking of me, and what do I need to bring to it? This shift removes the goal of feeling confident from the center of attention. And when you are not trying to feel confident, When you are not monitoring whether you are seeming confident, the actual conditions for genuine confidence are allowed to emerge. Step 2. Identify the specific domain and the current skill level. Confidence is always domain-specific. You might be genuinely confident in one area, say, your professional expertise, while experiencing significant doubt in another, say, your ability to navigate romantic relationships or public speaking. This is normal and healthy. Real confidence is not a global trait but something that develops in specific areas of life. To develop genuine confidence, you need to identify the specific domain in which you want to develop it. And you need to honestly assess your current skill level in that domain. This honesty is crucial. You cannot be in genuine denial about what you do and do not actually know how to do, or your development plan will be built on a false foundation. Often, what appears as a confidence problem, I lack confidence in social situations, is actually a skill problem. You lack confidence because you lack the skills of social interaction, the experience navigating social situations, the understanding of what makes conversations go well. Or what appears as a confidence problem, I lack confidence in presentations, is actually a combination of a skill problem and an anxiety problem that needs to be addressed through actual practice and exposure. Honest assessment of the actual problem is the foundation for the development plan. Step 3. Engage in deliberate skill development. Once you have identified the domain and your current skill level, the work is to deliberately develop the skills in that domain. This means moving into the learning zone, the zone of proximal development, where you are attempting things that are challenging but achievable. This might mean taking a course or finding a mentor to help you learn. It might mean creating a practice structure that forces you into situations where you have to use the skill. It means seeking feedback on your performance. It means being willing to fail and learn from the failure. This is unglamorous work. It is not about positive thinking or feeling good about yourself. It is about actual skill development. And it is work that requires time, effort, and the willingness to be not yet competent. Step 4. Expose yourself to the feared situation repeatedly. For many confidence problems, there is also an anxiety component. You are not just lacking skill, you are anxious about the situation in which you need to apply the skill. Public speaking anxiety, social anxiety, performance anxiety, these are real nervous system responses that benefit from repeated, direct exposure. The principle is the same as it is in evidence-based anxiety treatment. Repeated exposure to the feared situation, without the catastrophic outcome that you are anxious about, gradually reduces the anxiety response. Each time you do the thing you are anxious about and it does not end in catastrophe, your nervous system's threat response to that situation is reduced. This is uncomfortable work. You will feel anxious when you are doing it. The point is not to eliminate the anxiety before you do the thing. It is to do the thing while anxious and discover that the anxiety does not prevent you from functioning. Step 5. Cultivate authentic presence in the situation. As you develop skill and reduce anxiety through exposure, a final element is necessary, the cultivation of genuine presence and authenticity. This means learning to be in the situation without the constant self-monitoring that generates self-consciousness. This is partly a matter of practice. As you become more skilled and as you become more familiar with the situation, you naturally move from conscious control of the behavior to automatic execution. You do not have to think about the mechanics of the skill, they have become automatic. And with automaticity comes the possibility of genuine presence. It is also a matter of intentional practice. In mindfulness-based approaches, people develop the capacity to be present with experience without judging it or trying to control it. This non-judgmental, open presence is the antidote to self-consciousness. The more you can practice being present with what is actually happening, rather than with how you are performing or how you are being perceived, the more naturally genuine confidence will emerge. This is the actual work of building real confidence. It is not about feeling better about yourself. It is about developing genuine competence, moving through anxiety, and learning to be authentically present. And when you do this work, genuine confidence, not as a feeling, but as the natural expression of actual competence and authentic presence, will emerge. Chapter 10. Living confidently, a different way of being. The final dimension of understanding real confidence is understanding what living with it looks like, what it means to be a person who moves through the world with genuine confidence. And surprisingly, it does not look like what the confidence industry has been advertising. Genuine confidence is quiet. Real confidence is often quiet. It does not need to announce itself. It does not need to perform. The genuinely confident person does not need to convince others of their competence. Their actions, their presence, their willingness to tackle challenges speaks for itself. Many people with genuine confidence in their domain are actually quite humble. They are not constantly talking about how good they are. They are not engaged in the kind of self-promotion that false confidence often requires. They are simply competent and present, and they let the work speak for itself. This stands in stark contrast to the loud, brash, attention-seeking version of confidence that the popular culture often celebrates. The person who is constantly telling you how confident they are, who is constantly seeking reassurance that they are doing well, who needs continual praise and recognition, this person is typically not genuinely confident. They are anxious about their competence and are seeking reassurance from others. Genuine confidence is willing to be uncertain. The person living with real confidence is not someone who has figured it all out, who knows exactly what is going to happen, who is certain of success. Real confidence coexists with genuine uncertainty. The confident person is willing to move into uncertain territory because they trust their ability to handle uncertainty. This might mean taking on projects with unknown outcomes. It might mean entering fields where they are not yet expert. It might mean trying things where failure is a genuine possibility. The confidence is not in the guarantee of success. It is in the capacity to face uncertainty and respond resourcefully. This is why the genuinely confident person often seems not anxious about failure, not because they have convinced themselves that failure will not happen, but because they have made peace with the fact that failure might happen and they can handle it. This acceptance of the possibility of failure, paradoxically, is what makes failure less likely, because the person is not paralyzed by fear of it, they can actually do what is necessary to succeed. Genuine confidence is willing to ask for help. The genuinely confident person is also, often, very willing to ask for help. This seems like a contradiction. Should not real confidence mean not needing help? But it is not. Real confidence includes confidence in others, confidence in relationships, confidence that you can acknowledge what you do not know and ask for support. The person who cannot ask for help because they are worried about what it says about them, that they are weak, not competent, not capable, is showing insecurity, not confidence. The person who can say, "I need help with this, and here is what I need," is demonstrating genuine confidence. Confidence that asking for help does not diminish their competence, confidence that others are willing to help, confidence that accepting help is part of being competent in a complex world. Genuine confidence does not require superiority. One of the most pernicious aspects of false confidence is that it often depends on a sense of superiority, on the belief that you are better than others, that you are ahead of them, that you have something they lack. This comparative stance is exhausting and ultimately hollow. Real confidence does not depend on being better than others. It can coexist with the recognition that others are competent, skilled, accomplished in their own ways. Your confidence in your own abilities does not require that you be the best. It only requires that you are competent and developing. This is a profound shift in how people relate to each other. When you are not trying to prove your superiority or maintain an image of being better than others, you can actually appreciate others' competence. You can collaborate without threat. You can be genuinely glad when others succeed. This is the genuine confidence of mature, secure people. Living confidently. A continuous process. Finally, it is worth noting that living with genuine confidence is not a destination that you arrive at. It is a continuous process, a way of meeting the world that develops and deepens over time. There will be domains where you are more developed and more confident, and domains where you are newer and less confident. There will be times when you are stretched, when you are learning, when you are facing new challenges and you are not yet fully competent. This is not a failure of confidence. It is the ongoing nature of development and growth. The person living with real confidence is not someone who has achieved confidence in all domains and will never doubt themselves again. They are someone who has learned to trust their ability to face new challenges, to develop new competence, to handle uncertainty and failure. And they continue to meet each new situation with this combination of humility about what they do not know and confidence in their ability to learn. This is what it means to live confidently. To move through the world trusting yourself not because you have all the answers, but because you know you can face whatever comes. Epilogue. The freedom of being unsure. At the beginning of this book, we identified a paradox. The more you try to be confident, the less confident you become. By now, you understand why. The effort to be confident activates self-consciousness, which undermines authentic presence. The performance of confidence prevents the development of genuine competence. The attempt to eliminate uncertainty and fear prevents the nervous system learning that actually reduces anxiety. There is a freedom in understanding this paradox. Once you see that trying to be confident is not the path to confidence, you can let that effort go. You can stop the constant monitoring of how you are coming across. You can stop the performance. You can stop the positive self-talk designed to convince yourself that you are okay. And in that letting go, something unexpected becomes possible, the actual development of genuine confidence. Not through effort, but through the honest engagement with the skills you need to develop. Not through positive thinking, but through the direct experience of facing your fears and surviving them. Not through the curation of an image, but through the authentic expression of who you actually are. The freedom of being unsure is not a contradiction with genuine confidence. It is its foundation. When you can be genuinely unsure, genuinely uncertain, genuinely open to not knowing, you are freed from the exhausting work of pretense. You are freed to actually develop competence. You are freed to be authentically present. You are freed to be confident in the deepest sense. You have probably tried many things to build confidence. You have probably repeated affirmations, practiced power poses, tried to think positively about yourself. And you have probably noticed that while these techniques might produce a temporary lift in mood, they do not produce lasting change in how you move through the world. The path described in this book is longer than the quick fixes. It requires actual skill development. It requires facing your fears. It requires being vulnerable. It requires giving up the performance. It requires the willingness to be unsure and to work with that uncertainty rather than trying to eliminate it. But it is the only path that actually works. And once you have begun to walk it, you will understand why. Genuine confidence is not something you manufacture. It is something you build, through honest work, through repeated engagement with challenge, through the willingness to be authentically human, uncertain, learning, developing, and trustworthy because you are real. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is fear walking. Confidence is when fear walks, but you are leading. Cheryl Lee Ralph.